How's it going, guys? My name's Graham and welcome to Two Left Thumbs. Today, I just wanted to take a few minutes to nerd out super hard and talk about what I think Sony might be building towards with their Spider-Man universe. I'm going to lace together a lot of things that we've seen, a few confirmed things, a few rumors, and paint a picture of where I think this is all leading. I just love Marvel, the MCU, and superhero movies in general, so this is stuff that I'm just thinking about a lot on a day-to-day basis anyways, and I kind of felt the need to do a quick brain dump. Not in the style of Max Gallardi, I'm not that talented. 2 MCU Spidey movies out and a third on the way after some major kicking and screaming. The future of Spider-Man at Sony and Marvel is still incredibly unclear. At basically every conceivable turn, it's remained clear that Sony wants Spidey all to themselves, understandably, or failing that for their movies to be fully integrated into the MCU canon. Get their hands on some of that sweet Avengers money. Our timeline of these co-produced Marvel-Sony movies and non-MCU Sony-Marvel movies has so far been Spider-Man Homecoming in July of 2017. Great. Everyone is happy. Win-win-win for Sony, Marvel, and everyone else. Venom, October 2018. Boo. Unfortunately for many comic book fans, this movie was a big enough success to warrant a sequel. I know some people liked it, but regardless of what you thought of the movie, I am very selfishly against it because it means that we will likely never see Venom properly utilized in the MCU, and I will just be forever bitter about that. Spider-Man Far From Home, July 2019. This marked the end of Sony and Marvel's original character usage agreement, and negotiating a new contract began. With the major tease of J. Jonah Jameson at the end of this movie, it seemed very likely that these studios were fully intending to continue working together. Reaching that agreement was far less smooth than expected, but after months of headaches negotiating and a bunch of misleading headlines, we have a Spider-Man 3 set for July 2021. Notably still in the MCU continuity. It's not inconceivable that somewhere down the line, Sony carries forward with this franchise separate from Marvel. Even though Marvel has linked Spidey to Iron Man and every other Avenger in every possible way to make sure Sony is unable to do that effectively in any way. One more part of this deal is that Spider-Man is allowed to appear in one more non-solo Spidey MCU film. That's like a lot of descriptors in front of a movie. Simultaneously, while working alongside Marvel, Sony is investing deeper and deeper in their own separate Spider-Man universe. You know, their tangential, kind of related, but not really Spider-Verse, but one that's completely separate from Spider-Verse. You know the one. Marvel tends to release sequels whenever it makes sense in their running continuity, but it's pretty clear that Sony has been pushing for them to maintain a every second July release for mainline Spider-Man movies. 2017, 2019, 2021. If the relationship continues, expect to see a movie every 2 years for the foreseeable future. 2020 is a gap year, and in this time, we will be seeing Sony's Morbius in July 2020, and Venom 2 in October 2020. And now, just the other day, we have the announcement of another Sony-controlled Marvel project set to be released in October 2021. This will presumably be something in their adjunct Spidey universe. I would say that's too quick of a turnaround to be a Venom 3 or Morbius 2, so it's very likely to be a new property. Although Sony could secretly be setting up a pre-production on either of those movies while they're actively filming these ones, Sony has been burned in the past by investing heavily upfront in sequels and franchises before they know if they're actual successes, but they haven't really seemed to have learned that lesson yet. Hardy is contractually committed to 3 films, so there's a real possibility that it's either a Venom 3 or maybe Venom appearing in another film. I wouldn't put it past them to jump the gun and start crossing over characters willy-nilly. Sony has obviously been eager for an expanded universe of their own for a very long time, workshopping their Silver and Black film, a Kraven solo film, all sorts of other ill-advised projects. With the recent success of Joker's solo origin story movie, it's safe to assume studios are going to take the wrong lessons from that success, and Sony likely has some renewed, if misplaced, confidence in their plan, even though they really shouldn't. Maybe don't count those hundreds of spider eggs before they've hatched, Sony. Many have assumed that Kraven will be the main villain of Spidey 3, hunting Peter after his identity was made not so secret at the end of Far From Home. So while it's something Sony's been trying to get off the ground for a long time, if that ends up being true, it will be very unlikely that Kraven will be getting a solo film just a few short months after his movie with Spider-Man. If the villain of Spider-Man 3 ends up being anyone other than Kraven, then my money is on this October 2021 being a solo Kraven movie. Several fans think that Jared Harris in Morbius will end up being Otto Octavius. He's definitely been a popular fan cast for the character, and it turned heads when he suddenly showed up on the casting list of Morbius. His current character has only been listed as Morbius's mentor. Now, they've been repeatedly denying that this is the case, But they're going to do that regardless of if it's true or not, so you can never really put any stock in denials. It's kind of funny, the counterintuitiveness of how that works. Jeremy Conrad, aka Manabite, is reporting that this could supposedly be a Spider-Woman film. This is something Sony has previously developed. There's been suspicions among fans for a while that Sony is trying to rush out Sinister Six as quickly as possible. They have had a multitude of failed attempts at this film. I think regardless of fan desire or relative success of the film, they would still end up patting themselves on the back just for getting it done. Between Vulture, Scorpion, Shocker, the Tinkerer, Mysterio, Venom, Morbius, and likely Carnage, Sony could finally have their first Sinister Six assembled. If they went this route, they would probably do some Suicide Squad anti-hero shtick, like pitting those other six against Carnage. Sorry, Tinkerer, you're probably not going to be in the mix there. You can be the alpha to their Power Rangers. While on paper that's not the worst thing ever, suddenly throwing these characters all in a mixing pot with very little establishment of half of them prior, and several of them belonging to different continuities, it just seems ill-advised. But you never know what those guys are going to cook up in their lab of bad filmmaking. I mean, I guess it's not all bad if they occasionally give us films like Spider-Verse, but it's definitely going to take one or two more of those before you really have any goodwill back. It remains unclear if these Sony movies will ever truly interconnect with the MCU. It's assumed that Feige and co are starkly against that, while Sony is ever hungrier for a piece of that pie. They may attempt to strong-arm Marvel and leverage a crossover with Holland's Spider-Man in exchange for his continued use. Marvel obviously has big plans for the character and knows the mass appeal he currently has. So even though things are kind of sorted out for now with this upcoming movie, if Morbius and or Venom 2 are any sort of relative success, Sony's kind of positioned themselves rather well here. They should quite firmly know where their universe stands with the general audience, with plenty of time left to negotiate, either asking for a bigger cut of the profits or completely yanking Spider-Man away from Marvel. But what if Marvel holds their ground and refuses to participate in any further collaborations? They could argue that the character has no value outside of the MCU. Even if Venom was very profitable, there's a lot of untested ground there. Maybe they cut Spidey's web rather than allowing Sony to have any additional stake in the franchise they built from nothing. Really, how long can these studios strong-arm one another before something breaks? My running theory now is that this is an eventuality that Sony is absolutely preparing for. And really, they've provided themselves a perfect backdoor means of doing what will serve them best moving forward. Venom steered pretty far and away from directly hinting at Spider-Man. There were reports that Tom Holland filmed a few cameo scenes for that movie that were eventually cut at the behest of Marvel. It's unconfirmed whether or not that's actually true, and if it is, it may have just been a small courtesy between these two studios while they're still playing nice with one another, but I kind of expect that's going to change quite soon. Morbius' trailer clearly has a Spider-Man poster right up front with no attempt to hide it. In fact, they're kind of highlighting it. Although it appears to be the Sam Raimi suit worn by Tobey Maguire, fans more observant than myself pointed out that it's a skin from the PS4 game and not actually from the old trilogy. But there's a pretty recent rumor that this was hastily added to the trailer and the actual movie will still have Holland's suit. I have no idea how pasting one Spidey image was easier than another. If it really was done that hastily, it would have just been whatever came up in a Google search and throwing it up on there. The way they're making it sound, if that's literally all it was, then why not just get the Homecoming suit? There's like a million photos to choose from. You have the rights to them already. So I'm not sure I buy that rumor. I guess we'll see in July. Now another picture leaked from set showing a bus with a giant printed ad, "Where is Spider-Man?" from the Daily Bugle. And of course we have the post-credits style teaser that is instead post-trailer, with Michael Keaton's Adrian Toomes clearly still in the prison uniform seen in the end of Homecoming. This is pretty jarring because we seemingly go from tiptoeing around the idea of Spider-Man existing in this world to just straight up confirming that they're connected. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say this is completely unsanctioned by Marvel. But remember, Sony is only loaning these characters to Marvel. The film rights are still completely under their control. They may share the character under new contracts and agreements, but that's only for Marvel's benefit. Sony doesn't really need their permission to use the character. While it's unfortunate, I'm beginning to think that Spider-Man 3 will be the last solo Spidey film, and this other agreed upon unannounced team-up movie will be his final appearance in the MCU. This agreement has been mutually beneficial for the studios so far, but I just can't see it continuing forward if Sony has the confidence that they can carry that torch alone. And from Marvel's perspective, the deeper that these ruts get, I just can't see the relationship lasting if Sony is on the other side trying to force their continuity on something that they've meticulously built up over 20 plus films. And if the Morbius trailer is anything to go off of, they are forcibly wrestling that away. There may be more behind the scenes collaborating going on than meets the eye. It's hard to say. but I'd like to pitch my theory of how I think these two series could successfully merge or coexist. While I do want to clarify that this is just a theory, I'm starting to buy into it a lot myself. The more I've repeated this collection of puzzle pieces to myself, the more I'm seeing the whole and thinking this might be the route they're actually headed. And if this pans out the way I think it might, we may already have the seeds of a new plotline that could serve as a win-win-win scenario that preserves both universes and allows both studios to carry on uninterrupted. The key, very specifically to how Sony will carry forward, is also the only solution I see for allowing both universes to coincide if they're going to start intertwining in these ways. While Quentin Beck's Mysterio obviously hinted towards the multiverse, he was unmasked as being a con man, using the recent cosmic events as a means to manipulate everyone. But in May 2021, a few short months before Spider-Man 3 and earlier in the year of this new untitled Sony Marvel movie, we will be getting Doctor Strange 2 in the Multiverse of Madness. The possibilities of the multiverse's inclusion are truly endless. We may see dead characters brought back in this way, visit new worlds that have had completely different histories, and face epic threats that one-up Thanos by threatening the entire multiverse rather than one measly universe. To quickly recap a theory I had in my video on Monica Rambeau, I think the multiverse is going to be how the MCU introduces vampires. We know that Blade has an upcoming movie being planned by Marvel, which will have the unenviable task of explaining the existence of vampires and having them somehow live underground under the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s radars all this time, unless they're established prior to the Blade movie. Monica Rambeau is confirmed to be appearing in the WandaVision Disney Plus series played by Tyrone Harris. This is obviously being aged up from the character we met in Captain Marvel. Rambeau is eventually known in the comics as Spectrum, and like 30 other names, but this is where we'll probably meet her in the movies. A superhero who utilizes the full light spectrum in her powers. Next, we know that Wanda will be appearing alongside Strange in Multiverse of Madness. It's not confirmed, but I suspect that they're introducing Monica in WandaVision so that she may be quickly and easily integrated into Doctor Strange 2. I won't pretend to know quite what the plot of that movie will entail, but I imagine multiverses are going to be a big part of it. I predict that one of the universes Strange and Wanda, and likely Monica, will encounter will be inhabited or possibly entirely controlled by vampires. Having a hero who can blast UV light certainly makes a good vampire fighting tool, doesn't it? This encounter might be a surprise thing, very overwhelming for these heroes despite how strong and capable they already are. Rambeau could burst forward, maybe still learning the full extent of her powers, saving those two from a swarm of vampires. And if this thread is present in the movie, this is also where and how they'll likely meet Mahershala Ali's Blade. They announced the casting for that so far ahead of time. Maybe they were just eager and couldn't wait to share the fact that they scored such a big name for this role, but it kind of reminds me of when they announced Chadwick Boseman so far ahead of Black Panther so that they could kind of soft launch him in Civil War. I think they're going to introduce the general audience to Blade here so that when eventually a new Blade vampire movie devoid of Wesley Snipes comes out, people have a reason to be excited. You know, additional reasons to be excited. That's going to be a fucking sweet movie. Now, all in one swift motion, we have the multiverse, Blade, and vampires in the MCU. It'll show off how wild the multiverse can be, all sorts of wacky new worlds to explore that can now intermingle with the main timeline. It easily explains vampires, and if Marvel and Sony are actually working closely together, it provides a solid bridge to join these two universes. It might be coincidence, but the next movie we're getting from Sony is Morbius, the Living Vampire. Maybe it's too late to come up with this sort of connective tissue. That movie was still being filmed while they were hashing out these negotiations. It's not inconceivable that a small rewrite could be made for that groundwork to start being laid out. Sure, go ahead, use Vulture somewhere in Morbius. Introduce vampires. Hint at the idea that there's a killer vampire hunter out there somewhere. If needed, all of this could become one reality that features Morbius, Blade, vampires, the multiverse, and all of the MCU. Now, it's still unclear if this is the same world that Tom Hardy's Venom is in, but at the very least we know that Vulture is there, unless he ends up being like Andy Caves, the buzzard. Who knows? It's also a world where Spider-Man is supposedly missing. Has he been pulled into another world? Did he not properly return after the snap here? Maybe he's been killed by some other means already. Maybe this world's Spider-Man is someone other than Peter Parker. Now, one of the craziest possible connections and something that kind of exists more in the real world than it does these movies is that Sam Raimi is now being courted as the director of Multiverse of Madness. Given the poster we see in this trailer, the fact that Spider-Verse is an established and successful concept, and the possibility that Marvel and Sony are working more closely together than ever, again, not confirmed at all, for all we know it's on the complete brink of collapse, equally likely, Raimi could be a symbolic unification of Sony and Marvel. He could be the sole director who's worked at both studios. And if he's working in some way to open up and facilitate these sorts of conversations between the two studios, and they're already messing around with multiverse stuff, the best piece of fan service they could possibly give us is for the multiverse heroes to go to a new world, whether this is in Doctor Strange 2 or not, and encounter Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Maybe he's the Peter Parker of Morbius' universe. And maybe somewhere down the line, they can have Raimi do another Spider-Man crossover film, even if it's not the mainline Spider-Man, properly work with Venom again, and do him justice this time. He certainly wouldn't have the same studio interference as he did back in the day working on Spider-Man 3. Tobey popping in could be a one-time thing just to appease some fans. It would be just an incredible eureka, high-fiving each other, fist-pumping moment, while also showing that these two studios have maybe patched old wounds and now know how to work together. With or without that plot beat, Morbius has established that this world is missing its Spider-Man, which means that eventually Tom Holland's Peter Parker could begin showing up in both universes if they remain separate. With the multiverse, there is the distinct possibility that he could operate alongside the Avengers in the MCU and occasionally swing over to Sony to punch out vampires and weird alien goo creatures. I don't know to what extent they start intermingling things, but maybe at some point he would bring the Venom suit over to the MCU for a movie. If these worlds choose to remain entirely separate and both use Spider-Man, Sony can finally have their cake and eat it too. Or, they can run the franchise straight into the ground with no real consequences to the MCU. That's why I'm leaning towards this being the more likely outcome, is that Marvel would want to keep things at arm's length as much as possible. Sony could choose to kill off Keaton's Vulture or anything they want without affecting the Marvel storyline. This is a compromise that might satisfy both parties. Sure, the audience is going to get major whiplash trying to keep track of this stuff, which movies are connected to which events happen first, who belongs to what universe primarily. But with like 10 superhero movies coming out per year from Marvel, Sony, and DC, there are already people who don't understand that Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel are never going to meet. Why hasn't Wolverine ever helped out Captain America? People just like superhero movies, and the people who are going to care are going to look into that sort of stuff, and the people who don't care are just going to go watch a fun movie. And if things go completely belly up, just total catastrophe, with this multiverse solution, at some point in a movie, Marvel can just say that that universe got swallowed up, doesn't exist anymore, never to be heard from again, salvaging whatever components from it they need to carry on their story. And if Sony decides that it wants all of the money and wants to take off and run, they can similarly just say that Peter Parker has permanently parked himself in this Spider-Man devoid universe because it clearly needs his help more than the MCU. It gives both studios what they want, and it gives them both an avenue to bail if that ever becomes necessary. One of the main hurdles that comes down to is Holland's willingness to possibly film one Spider-Man movie per year for the foreseeable future. He pretty much already has to film every other year for the main movies. He's going to have to do MCU crossover events now and again, and if he has to appear for Sony possibly on every other year, as much as he clearly loves Spider-Man, I think anyone would burn out from that. Entertaining an entirely different side of things, if Manabite's rumor of Spider-Woman being in 2021 is true, then maybe she will fill the void that Spider-Man is currently leaving missing. She could rise up to take that mantle. These two movies can have their Venn diagram of certain shared events and villains, and people will be able to keep them distinctly different because they have two very separate Spider protagonists, also without having to butt heads scheduling for one actor's time. That could be really cool and appeal to a lot of people. Hell, as someone who disagrees with most of Sony's decisions, I'd be interested in seeing that. It would be a very fresh new take on things. We've already seen 3 different Spider-Men. Give us something different. Maybe I'm giving everyone way too much credit. Maybe Sony's doing what they always do, fumbling things, overreaching in a desperate attempt to cash in on a franchise that they don't know what to do with, damaging their own brand, Marvel's, and Spider-Man all along the way. Maybe vampires suddenly appearing in both studios at the same time is a coincidence. Maybe Raimi doesn't get the job, or if he is hired, makes Doctor Strange 2 and moves on. Vulture might be in the trailer as a fan tease with little more than a cameo in the movie just to entice people. There are a million different ways that this could go. I'm obviously speculating a lot. I've just been geeking out for like months over these possibilities, and with with some of the more recent news, the time felt right to just kind of let it all spill and put those theories out there. What do you guys think? Can these series coexist? Are they better off separate or trying to merge? Do you think the studios will come to an agreement or we'll see a severance of some kind? Really, there's like an infinite number of questions regarding this larger topic. Crazy how much drama goes on around this one character and his core cast of villains. So please feel free to speculate wildly in the comments. That's certainly what I've been doing. I'm eager to talk about this. I haven't had the chance to do so with anyone in person, so if we can get really into it in the comments, I would love that. This went on longer than I thought. Turns out I've had a lot to ramble about, building up in my brain for quite some time. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you see some value in some of those ideas, and I hope I'll see you again soon.